Welcome, everyone. I thought today we'd do something a little bit different, and I would invite you to join me here in the Grand Bazaar in Istanbul. Very lovely setting. Those of you who know me may know that I have a real love affair with all things Turkish. I've been to Turkey, I think, over 10 times now at various points in my life. I lived in Bolu in Turkey for 3 months when my daughter was just born. And my daughter's first word was Turkish rather than English. Her first word was gel, which means come. So, needless to say, I was very excited when I was working on my PhD to have an opportunity to go and do research in the Grand Bazaar in Istanbul. I went in the wintertime when it was very quiet, when I could wander these beautiful streets of the bazaar quietly and have a chance to talk with shopkeepers about the history of their shops. One of the things that's interesting about complex systems, and some of the things that we'll talk about in upcoming classes, are how the Internet of Things, sensors, can help us learn or can help create ways in which the material environment can learn. But you don't necessarily need for complexity to be high tech in order for it to be functional. We see the same principles of self-organization and relational dynamics unfolding in the Grand Bazaar. One of the readings that I've uploaded for you, and it is optional, is the paper that I wrote about the Grand Bazaar in Istanbul. It provides sort of the core case study for the research that I did in my PhD. So I'm going to walk you through that. Okay, so why the Grand Bazaar? Well, the Grand Bazaar is interesting. It is an area in Istanbul that encompasses about 75 acres, and in that zone there are 4,000 shops. It's incredibly dense. So if we think of each of these shops as individual agents, there's a lot of tests in this system, 4,000 testing entities looking for fitness. There are 61 streets, and there are very distinct shopping districts. So if we take a look at this map over here, we can see a list of shops. There are carpet dealers, jewelers, souvenir shops, fabric shops, antiquity dealers, leather, silver, copper, and denimware. Now, you may notice these areas concentrate. This is largely in the green. Here's the antiquity dealers over here. There's actually a lot of the jewelers are following this long road over here. We have denimware in this district, etc. You can see that there are cohesive districts. Now, what's interesting is that if we look at two different maps, one from 1960 and the one from 2000, both of the Grand Bazaar, we see that while there are these clustered districts, right, yellow over here, sort of a brownish tone over here, they have slightly different labels here, and some things have grown, some things have shrunk, and some things have disappeared. For example, there used to be sandal shops, there used to be hat shops and slipper shops, and those have disappeared, but other things have filled their places and other areas have expanded. You can see that this area here in yellow has sort of altered and morphed. Some of it remains the same, some of it changes. So in 40 years, we have the emergent organization of districts, and none of that is happening from the top down. It's not like anyone says to the individual merchants, okay, you over here, you become a denim dealer, you over here, you become a jeweler. All of these districts are emerging and sort of coalescing in similar zones based on the dynamics of these bottom-up processes. And I wanted to understand whether or not we could interpret these processes as being mechanisms generated by self-organizing processes. So what I did is I conceptualized each of the individual shops as agents within the system. And you can see in the construction of the bazaar, there's actually kind of some natural openings over here. This dimension here, from this border to this border, is about 10 feet. And in this case, we have two shops, two cells. So this 10-foot area, consider that a cell. So here we have two cells that form one shop together. But we can also have two cells in a different location where they subdivide the cell in the middle, and then that becomes 4 shops. So really the smallest operative element within the agent is half a shop. And from there, you can shrink or you can expand to fill the capacity of your niche, whatever that might be. But we have a lot of different individual shops within the bazaar. This permits massive parallel testing of niches at low investment to allow successful strategies to be discovered and replicated. So what do I mean by low investment? Well, imagine how we normally plan retail in North America. A shop might be 20,000 square feet at the base of a residential building. For example, Somerset and Ames, there are these very, very large floor plates for shops. So unless you're an extremely big business and you can fill that entire shop and make good on your rent on it, you're going to fail. In this case, you only need to succeed with half a shop. And if whatever you're selling in that shop doesn't work, you only have inventory that's in half a shop. And so this is a tiny little area where you can quickly shift what you're doing, test whether it works in that kind of light tactical way. If it fails, abandon it. If it succeeds, replicate. And if you want to replicate, then maybe you go from half a shop to a whole shop. Maybe you extend even further. And so we have this agent testing. We then have resource flows, which are human and material and capital. So there are a lot of people who are passing through the street network of the Grand Bazaar, a lot of materials that are passing through, and a lot of energy in the form of capital, of money that is changing hands within this area. There are a large number of redundant elements within this network that allow flows to reconfigure easily in accordance with economic and cultural shifts. So some zones of the Grand Bazaar might be important at one time, and the network supports those zones being important. But if there's shifts, say for example, at one point the areas closer to the mosque are more important, and at another point the areas closer to the university are more important. Because there's a lot of redundancy in the movement patterns, we can have different kinds of configurations of flows and goods. It's not sort of this rigid one-size-fits-all infrastructure. And this allows an ease of flow of material and human capital. Next, we have connective hubs. Now, what's interesting is within the bazaar, there are these little courtyards that are intended for storage, that were built originally as storage for goods. They're called Hans. And in the Hans, they are these collective areas where merchants from all over the bazaar will come and congregate. There are little water fountains there. There are barber shops over here. There's some centralized material storage here. There's tea providers that are here. These nodes in turn give places where even if you're an individual shopkeeper, you're going to run into other people in these areas, and they may be selling similar goods, in which case you can learn a little bit of knowledge from them about what you could be doing or how you might be mutating in order to work more effectively. Or maybe you learn that someone else, maybe you're overhearing a conversation in the barbershop and someone is saying, oh, my business in selling purses is going so great. And you think to yourself, gee, my business in selling carpets isn't going so great. Maybe I should move into purses. So this acts as an information transfer hub. The next piece in terms of information steering is the edges conditions of the Grand Bazaar. And this was something that I was really, really interested in terms of how the street facade itself communicates something to people. So imagine that you are a shop owner over here and you're having a slow day. What do? And this is what everyone does, and you see it all the time. You stand outside your shop, you lean against the wall, and you wait. You wait, you hope tourists are going to go by. But as you're waiting, you're seeing, where are the tourists stopping? Where are they going in? Where are they walking out carrying a purchase? Now, if you were working on a street where you've got one big 10,000 square foot shop, and then there's one 10,000 square foot shop across the street, you don't have a lot of information fidelity there, right? Because you're getting only a sample of one additional business to inform you. But in this case, because of this incredible density of shops and the fact that you can look in both directions, you sort of have a cognizant awareness of about 20 shops. And so you're seeing what those 20 other shops are doing and whether they're being successful. So here, the street edge is actually recording and transmitting information about successful routines, which then acts as a stigmergic signal to speed evolution. If you know that you're going out of business, that you've been trying to sell your sneakers for the last 6 months and you just aren't getting any nibbles, but you've got the space and you don't want to give up your business and you know you have to mutate, well, you can mutate like the roll of a dice and just say, oh, I guess I will try to sell earrings now or hammam towels. But if you can look at your environment and assess, what are the 20 people around me doing and how are they doing, then this gives you information in order for you to be able to make a more effective decision about what to do next. because of these dynamics, we get these emergent clusters of common product lines that are concentrated in one area where people are learning from each other, and where businesses tend to make use of the fact that people, this sort of dynamic of the rich get richer. So if a node is successful in selling silver, and then people go there to buy silver, then if other shops open up that are also selling silver, they have a chance to capture some of that business until you reach the local carrying capacity, at which point, when you start to add an additional shop, the success of all the businesses begins to diminish. So the idea is you want to sort of figure out what the carrying capacity is. And at the moment where you're adding shops and everyone is still doing great, you can keep adding shops. But it's this idea that we had in that notion of John Holland and those bins of niches, that there's a moment when the resource that is feeding you, and as a business, the resource being people's capital coming in and depositing their money so that they can buy something. If you as a niche are offering certain things and no one is asking for that anymore, then you're best to try to switch what you have on offer so that you can be offering something that people do want. But you need to have those resources that are actually in the system fueling it. And the bazaar is very resource rich because people are constantly passing through, both tourists and locals. So merchandise niches tuned to local carrying capacity tend to emerge from the bottom up. Now, the bazaar actually extends beyond the formal boundaries of that 75 acres. Actually, all of the streets from the bazaar area leading down towards the Bosphorus have very, very similar kinds of very small scaled shops, right, that we see over here, but also very, very specialized areas. So what was this one? I think this one is selling prayer beads over here. So I think this whole row is selling prayer beads over here. And this whole row here is selling children's clothing. This whole row here is selling buttons and ribbons or zippers. So you get these very, very fine-grained niches that are constantly kind of emerging. And it's really, really interesting to see that, again, this isn't happening through centralized control. It's a pattern, but it's not a pattern that has been structured or designed. It's a pattern that has emerged because of these dynamics. So we can relate this back to an earlier example I talked about when we were discussing the canal houses, about phase space and what are all the possible states. So what are all the possible kinds of merchandise specialization that you could have, be it denim or leather or carpet goods or souvenir trinkets? What is that space of possibility? What are all the ways in which a shop might mutate and test a different niche? And then what is the total number of shops? And according to Kaufman in his NK model, the total space of possible states of the Grand Bazaar is the number of merchandise specialization times the number of shops. And you run that string and you get sort of the possible states of the Grand Bazaar. And there are many, many, many possible states of the Grand Bazaar for it to explore. But it doesn't have to explore randomly because there are these signals. Sorry, fly, something. I thought it was looked like a spider. It's just a moth. I guess because I'm standing in the Grand Bazaar, there are things running around on the ground, maybe. Okay, so I'm going to talk about this in the next lecture, but I just want to leave with this idea that I had in my research to say, well, gee, Kevin Lynch talked about urban fabric, and he talked about paths and landmarks and nodes and edges and districts. Is there a way in which we can make this analogous to some of the physical features of the Grand Bazaar, but not think about these features in terms of just like objects, like a path is a thing or a landmark is a thing, but actually think about it in terms of what do these things lend to the dynamic of complex adaptation? So we're going to pursue that in the next lecture. But this is just a teaser for that. Thank you for joining me in the Grand Bazaar. I will stop my video. Yeah, here I am. Here I am in the beautiful Grand Bazaar. I invite all of you to come to Istanbul when we have a chance to travel. I know I certainly will. And I should say something Turkish, something meaningful and Turkish. Oh, teşekkür ederim. Thank you. Thank you for your time. Take care.